Hello everyone and welcome to this Holy Grail Games video. My name is Georgina and today I am here with Jamie.
Hey folks.
And we are going to be explaining how to play Copan Dying City, a worker placement game by Dubus and Olivier Melison. So everything that you see on the table here in this video is a factory prototype copy. It is beautiful. It more or less corresponds to what the final game is going to look like, but there are a few things we're still tweaking, so bear with us. Here on the table we have a complete setup for a two-player game. We are not going to explain how to set up in this video, only mechanics. So let's get started. What would a game be without a little bit of theme? So let's explain what the theme is about. Copan Dying City is a game about a city in decline. You are playing as noble families of the city of Copan, so a Maya city, that has a little bit of a dark destiny ahead of it.
Just a bit.
Essentially, as you play, the game is going to offer you the challenge of a reverse difficulty curve. So you are attempting to secure your legacy as the city slowly crumbles around you. At the beginning of the game, everything is going to be quite easy. Resources will be abundant and actions will be easy to perform. However, as the game continues, there are going to be events of various levels of devastation. You are going to have to deal with resources that are becoming rarer and rarer and will eventually completely disappear, and also certain areas of the board will be closed off to you. So strap yourselves in.
It's a ride.
It is. It's quite the ride. So how is it all going to work? So as I said previously, it is a worker placement game. You have all of your materials here in front of you, and on each of your turns you're going to have two phases to play through. You're going to have your court phase, during which you will be gaining your resources, which is good, but also setting off dreadful events, which is bad. And then you will have your action phase, during which the worker placement mechanic of the game comes into play. You will place your totem onto one of the areas of the board to perform an action. So, Jamie, tell me all about the court phase.
So, the court phase is, as you said, the phase where we're going to get our resources.
Okay.
It concerns the central pyramid. As you can see, we've placed these little spaces here. These are placed down depending on the number of players, and they block off different parts of the pyramid. This is just to make sure that the game doesn't go for too long at lower player counts, and also to make sure everybody has the same number of turns.
Okay.
Okay, so it all starts with your court tiles.
Okay, so we start with a hand of four.
Exactly. There are 4 different types of tiles. You also have a green one over there. 1 for each type of resource in the game.
Easy.
Okay, and you're going to be placing these tiles onto the pyramid in order to generate resources, but not only. Okay, you can place your court tile in any available square.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be near another player's tile, near the edge, forcibly on or off one of the icons. Anywhere you like.
And it can be in an area that isn't adjacent to you, essentially.
Anywhere you like. If it's empty, it can go down.
Yeah,
okay?
so the pyramid is like one big central board space.
Exactly. With 4 quadrants, if you will.
Yep.
If you place a tile down in an empty space, you will be activating your tile. If you place it down in a space with icons, however, another effect will go off. The little spiral we have here is an event. So an event will occur for better or for worse.
Yep.
And this is a free resource space. So you'll gain 2 free resources of your choice if you place a tile down in one of those spaces.
Great.
This is kind of a little bit of an incentive to have people move around the board and not always stay in the same quarter. Whereas the events are also a bit of a thematic thing. And even though they are a little bit, the outcome of them is a bit random, they do allow you certain actions, which you'll see as we go further through the rules. So, how does this work? I place my tile down in any available space, and I will be activating that tile to gain any resources.
Okay.
However, if there is a tile, 1 or more tiles adjacent to it, I will also activate those tiles. So I put this red tile down in between this yellow and this blue. I will activate all 3 of them and gain those resources. Okay? How many resources? That is the question.
Indeed.
Because, as we said at the beginning of Copan, the city is flourishing, resources are abundant, but as this rather dark destiny approaches, resources will be harder and harder to come by, so you will gain less. This is represented by these resource sliders, which they are decline sliders, to give them their proper term, and they represent the decline of the city. When you place a tile down, so in my case, this red one, you move the cube of that tile, of that slider down by 1 space. You do not move the slider down for the other resources that you may activate. Only the tile you place, okay? Then we look to see if we have placed our tile on an event space. If we have, I'm going to assume I have for the sake of this explanation, we're going to trigger an event. So that's when we come over to here to the event card, the dice tower, and eventually the bad tokens.
Yes.
First of all, we look to the event card. Now, there are 12 of these in the game. At the beginning of the game, you and the other players will either choose one randomly or choose one that suits the kind of experience you wish to play through. They vary from very quick to slower to more punishing to more lenient, with a mixture all the way in between. It really depends what you guys want to play at the given time.
Absolutely.
If you say we're a bit short on time, we'll do a quick version, great. If you're saying we have loads of time and we're kind of in the mood to punish ourselves, then we can take a slow and rather punishing card, okay? Each card has different effects depending on the result of the event die. Now, there is only one dice roll in this game. However, we do have a dice tower because this event roll is very important and rather thematic, and you'll see it really mixes up your play experience, okay? So, when an event is triggered, we will roll the dice, and we will take the face of the dice, look at the event card, and apply that effect to every single player, not just the player whose turn it is. So if it's a good effect, everybody gains resources, everybody gains something. If it's a bad effect, everybody gets punished.
Absolutely.
There you go. That's just the way the city is. Okay? So, additionally, once we have rolled that dice and applied the effect, we are also going to refresh certain cards on the board.
Yes.
Okay? Notably the character cards and the calendar cards. We will explain what they do a little bit further on. I was saying that event cards aren't necessarily bad. You can use them strategically. That's one of the ways to do it. For example, if you don't like the cards which are on the board, you can force a refresh.
Yes.
And maybe something good or bad, depends on what happens. Then, we look at the sliders. As I said, these sliders can go down or will go down every time you place a tile, and some of the event effects can also cause them to go down. You can see there are two main spaces here on each slider. If the cube moves over one of those spaces, a decline event occurs, okay? Now, if you have rolled the dice for an event, you keep that effect. If you haven't yet rolled the dice for the event, you will roll the dice and apply the effect of the event card, but you will not refresh the cards.
No, because these kind of events have a different effect.
Exactly. So this is where the city starts to crumble, society starts to fall apart, because there is less faith in the governing bodies, there is less food, there is death, destruction, all that kind of good thing that we want to see in this game. What that happens is we take the face of that die and we look at the slider which declined. So I'm going to take this part of the board, so the embassies, once again, we'll get to them in a little bit. So the embassies are linked to this slider. So if this slider went over one of the main spaces, I look at the result of the die, and I look at the symbols which are in this area. We can see there's a sort of almost eclipse symbol here. So I find this symbol on the board, and this embassy is now closed for the rest of the game. Nobody can access it, gain its bonuses, everything, all that sort of stuff, okay? This can affect 4 of the 5 actions available on the board. It makes less actions and less results available to you. You have less options. It shows the city starting to fall apart. Okay?
Essentially, everything's going to close in around you as you go.
Exactly. But exactly what closes down and when, that is up to the fates to decide.
Absolutely.
After that, and only after those first 3 stages, so placing our tile, moving the slider, checking for an event, checking for a decline, then we gain our resources. Now, we gain resources at the end because depending on what happened, we may gain more or less. So, for example, in this one, I place down the red tile. So I'd look at the ball slider first, the red slider rather, and if the cube is in the first part of the slider, I gain 2 resources. If it is in the second part of the slider, I gain 1 resource. And if it's in the final part of the slider, I gain 0 resources.
Essentially, what we're showing here is that all of the resources in Copan are finite.
Exactly.
So every time you generate one, that resource is gone, and it will mean that the decline trackers essentially show how increasingly rare that resource is becoming as you play. So at the beginning, as we were saying before, everything is very abundant, and then things will not.
Things get tricky.
Yes.
Once we said, like we said, it's an inverse difficulty curve, a sort of engine builder, but not meant to score lots of points at the end of the game, but more to survive the end of the game.
Yeah.
You'll see as we go along.
Absolutely.
In any case, that's how you gain your resources. Like I said, this phase is incredibly important because it kind of dictates the flow of the game, how many resources you gain, which events go off.
Yeah.
Additionally, the game can end in one of two ways, which we'll go more into detail at the end, but to resume very briefly, either the entire pyramid is full up of tiles, in which case everybody will have played the same number of actions and we end the game immediately after that turn ends, or two of the sliders are at 0, in which case that player ends their turn, we play until the first player, who doesn't get to replay, so everybody has played the same number of turns, and then we end the game, okay? As a quick notice, also when you get to the end of the track, any further declines in that sector impact on the one clockwise around the pyramid. So if I get to the end of the green track, any other declines will affect the yellow track. So it's kind of a snowball effect after a certain time. Which end of the game you will see depends entirely on the event card. Once again, a fast one or a slow one, a punishing one or a lenient one, that will really depend on how many of these kind of very punishing or tempo results that you get during your events and your declines. Okay? And it's up to you, of course, as the players to adapt to that in your strategy, your timing, all that kind of thing as the event goes on. That is the court phase.
Great. So, yeah, the court phase, like we just said, can be more or less profitable. You're getting resources, which is great, but you're also potentially setting off events, which is not so great. However, once that's all done and you have claimed your resources and put them onto your player board, you are ready to go for phase 2, which is your action phase. During your action phase, this is where the worker placement mechanic of Copan kicks in. You are going to be taking your player totem, so each player has just one of these of their colour, and choosing one of the 5 areas of the board to perform an action in. I take my player totem and I choose the zone that I'm interested in. Let's say for the sake of proximity to my arm, I'm going to choose Site 1. When I arrive on a site, I always arrive via the entry space. So here we can see there's an arrow above the top end of the triangle here. I'm going to place my totem onto that space and resolve its effect. Now, for most part, the entry space of a site has a cost. So in this case, I would have to pay 1 yellow resource to enter here. I pay the cost and then I get to perform the action of my choice on that site. However, when I enter a new site, I also have an additional choice to make. My player totem has 2 sides to it. I have the resource side, and if I flip it over, I have the victory point side. So in general, when I first enter a space, this isn't going to affect me very much, as I generally have to start by paying an entry cost. However, should I stay for a subsequent turn, then I'm going to move around the area that I currently occupy, and then I'm going to gain different bonuses for staying there longer. So the concept is the longer you stay on a particular site, the more benefits you are going to reap from it. Obviously, if you can afford to stay there, you must be able to pay a site's action to be able to remain there. Otherwise, you must go somewhere else. So here, for example, I have performed my first turn on this site. On my second site, I move around to the next available space and I will gain, in this case, 1 resource of my choice. Had I placed my player totem this side up, I would gain 2 victory points instead. If I remain for a third turn, so obviously in the best of worlds this is what would happen, I would gain the effect of my totem times 2. So in this case I would gain 4 victory points for staying here for an additional turn, or 2 resources. Of course, in the best of worlds, I would stay on each site I go to for 3 turns. But on top of the fact that you have to be able to pay its cost, there's going to be an additional little thing that you have to deal with, and that, of course, is other players. Other players can push me when I am on a certain site. So let's imagine Jamie, thank you Jamie, arrives on his turn with his player totem, and I am already on the entry space. He is going to push me. Oops. Knock me over on the second area of that site. So what this means is, unfortunately, as Jamie pushed me and I did not move to that space of my own volition, I do not gain the bonus of being there. However, what it does mean is that on my next turn, I'll automatically move to the final space and gain the ×2 bonus. So he's given me a little bit of a boost, even if missing out on that ×1 is a bit of a bummer. Should, however, a player push me when I am on the final space of a site, then I must move immediately to a new one. So on Jamie's turn, he moves around and he ejects me, essentially, from this site. I must move to a new site. However, I don't have to pay the cost of entering that site or activate its entry space in any way. So that's a little bit of a benefit for me. I have been ejected, but at least I don't have to pay the cost.
And for those of you wondering how that might happen, you can push and be pushed again.
Yes.
So more than 2 people can be in a spot.
Absolutely.
There are also different rewards and effects which allow you to move your totem around the board.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's how that would occur.
And then on top of that, obviously, each site only has 3 available spaces and you can play up to 4. So there can be a fair amount of shoving going on. Once I have reached the final space of a site, as you can see, there is a little exit arrow here, I must leave. So I can never stay on one site for more than 3 turns. So basically, it's all going to be about optimization. How long can I afford to stay in a place? How long should I stay in a place? Bearing in mind that obviously each site has its own benefits to me when I remain there. So let's get into the nitty gritty of what it is that each site does. I am going to remove this closed token for you, Jamie.
Oh, no, that is the
wrong token. To refresh that, and let's go ahead and explain site 1.
Exactly. So there are 5 different sites, each one representing, shall we say, some of the main axes of the city, where your family will want to exert influence in order to guide it towards a prosperous future, but we all know that's not going to be the case. Anyway, the first one is the embassies.
Yes.
So this is kind of Copan reaching out to all the other cities of the Maya civilization to establish diplomatic ties.
Yes.
So when you put your token here, once you have played or gained resources, you must first travel to the city of your choice, represented by this gold line. Now, there are 3 different sectors of city. The further you go, the more it costs, but the more rewards you get. So it's really up to you and how many resources you have.
Yes.
To keep things simple, I'm going to go to Tikal. Okay. It's in the first zone, so I must first pay 1, 2, 3 resources. So once again, removing them from my board to reach the city. And then, like any good guest, I must bring an offering. So this is indicated on the top of the city reward tile. Now there are a load of these in the main game. They are distributed randomly during setup. So you have different effects, different costs, and different abilities at different places each game. Here, I must pay 1 resource of my choice and 1 yellow resource.
So essentially, I'm paying my journey and then a little present.
Exactly. Never come empty-handed.
No.
Okay? When I do that, I can take 1 of my little player tokens. You'll see these a lot in the game, and I place it in a spot on the city. Okay? Once I do that, I can take not only the rewards shown, so this means I get to take a character card for free.
From those available.
There are loads of icons in this game.
Tons.
Most of them are very self-explanatory once you get into the game, but of course there is a full glossary in the rulebook. Not only that, however, of course, because I have travelled, I've taken my retainers and all my prestige with me, I also get to take a reward token from the embassy box, which is this little box here, which you guys will, of course, get in the main game. It's not just for show. It is separated into 3 different parts for each of the areas. The further out you go, the more it costs, but the better the rewards are. I have gone to a city in Zone 1, rather, so I will take a little reward token from Zone 1. I get a free resource. Not bad.
Great.
However, you can do 2 different things with the embassies vis-a-vis long-term strategy. You can visit different embassies, in which case you will score more points at the end of the game. We will get to that after all of this. Or you can visit the same city multiple times. So I can return to Tikal, paying the same costs, gaining the same reward, and I place a second embassy token. When I do that, I gain a reward for each token I have placed there.
Yes.
So now I would draw 2 reward tokens, okay? I'm only drawing resource tokens here, but there are loads of different effects that you can get some more useful than others, depends on the luck of the draw.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You only ever gain the reward from the city, however.
Of course, no,
once.
only the number of tokens you draw changes.
Yeah.
But especially if you have resources to spare, which is not that common in this game, but if you play well, who knows? Yeah. Going multiple times to one of the faraway cities, you can get some real good stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So there you go.
Absolutely. So, yeah, there we go. That's the first zone. So it's costly.
Yep.
But it's also very, very high in reward should you be able to afford to make the journey to an allied city. So let's move on to Zone 2. When I arrive in Zone 2, as you can see, contrary to every other zone on the board, I do not have a cost to enter the River of Copan. The river is the only area that will give me resources immediately upon entering. And it is also the only area on the board that is going to allow me to automatically gain court tiles when I enter. So when I arrive on the river, I am going to be able to take the first 2 court tiles available to me there. I can then choose to pay 1 additional resource to take the 2 remaining court tiles from the river, or I can choose to pay to purchase a storage extension for my player board. So, as we were explaining earlier, when I gain resources, I'm going to move my resource counters along my board like so. Of course, once they reach the end, I have run out of space and any additional resources that I generate will be lost, which is not ideal. We already have finite resources. We do not want to be wasting them. These storage extensions thus let me store more resources than I would originally have been able to on my board, and also give me more spaces for character cards. The first storage extension that I purchased during the game is going to cost me 1 resource, and then each additional storage extension, that I purchase will cost me an additional resource. So my first one will cost me 1, then 2, then 3, and so on and so forth. Of course, I get all the benefits of being able to hold additional resources and additional cards each time. Plus a little bit of potential end-of-game scoring. We'll get to that later.
2 little specifics before we move on. Should you ever find yourself in the position where you have 0 resources, that is the only action you can do.
Yes.
Unless you are already in one of the locations.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah.
Secondly, you may be asking, well, what happens if you have no court tiles during your court phase? It's not great.
It's not.
But it depends on how you're playing.
Yeah.
You know, generally you always want to have court tiles, because if you do not have court tiles during the court phase, you draw a court tile from the tile bag, you flip it face down, and you put it anywhere on the pyramid. It does not activate. It does not activate any other tiles. It does cause events if it covers one up.
Yeah.
And it does gain you resources should you cover up as well.
Yeah.
However, you do not generate any additional resources.
No.
So you kind of lose a turn in terms of resources. If you have resources to spare, great. If you don't, I hope it was worth it. There we go.
Yes. So in general, allowing yourself to run out of court tiles is not a good idea. We do recommend that you visit the Copan River occasionally just to stock up. And of course, there are other effects in the game that allow you to gain court tiles as a bonus. Of course, you have to be lucky enough for them to be drawn at the start of the game or during play. So that's it for the Copan River. That's pretty simple. Moving on to Site 3, the ball court. So the ball court is where the sacred ball game is played. Here you are going to be able to attract influential followers to join your cause. So when I arrive here on Site 3, I'm going to have to pay 1 red resource to enter. Once I have paid my entry cost, I'm going to be able to choose one of the 6 available characters, assuming that there are still 6 left, and add them to my player board. Each character card has a cost in its top left-hand corner and an effect shown at the bottom. There are 3 different types of character cards available. The ones with the infinity symbol are essentially your engine. They are going to be able to supply you with bonus effects throughout the game. There are cards with a lightning symbol. These are cards that must be discarded to obtain their effect only once and can never be used again. And then there are cards with a sunset symbol, which are for end of game scoring. They will potentially allow you to gain resources, gain points, depending on the resources that you have, at the end of the game. So I choose the character card that I wish to take and I add it to the top of my player board in one of my available spaces. Should I have no spaces available, I am allowed to discard a character of my choice by flipping their card over and placing a new character on top. There is no limit to the number of character cards you can have face down on your player board, and sometimes you can even get bonuses for having lots of discarded characters. Once I have picked my character and placed them on my player board, I have one thing left to do. I must place one of my player tokens on the side of the ball court that I just took my card from. So in this case, the left-hand side of the player board. Essentially, I now have a player in the Sacred Ball game, and at the end of the game, I will gain additional victory points depending on territory control. If I am the player with the most players on the left-hand side of the board, I will gain 6 points, then 3. Same thing for the right-hand side, and then there is an overall majority. So potentially some nice scoring to be had there. That is it for the Sacred Ball Court. Jay, I'll let you move to the altar cards.
Exactly. So, this is an action with a lot of choices available, to put it quite bluntly.
The altars have a lot to give.
Exactly, they do, but they are ephemeral.
Yes.
Sorry, blah, blah.
What are words?
Exactly, what are words, exactly. So once we've moved there with our totem, we have paid a cost or gained anything that we have to gain.
Yep.
We choose one of the cards available to us.
Yep.
Now, there are a load of these in the main box.
Yes.
You will cycle through them throughout the game in different orders, exactly, because of events. So it's the rewards are ever changing for this section. And once again, we talked about the event cards, using them tactically. If you do not like what is available, either for these cards or for the character cards, you can force an event and start again.
Of course, you'll have to suffer the event
Come what
die.
May. Yeah, come what may. So, very simply, I choose a card and I pay the cost that is indicated at the top. It is normally, or it is always, a mix of resources of my choice and blue resources. Okay?
Yes.
Once I have paid the cost of the card, so for example, on this card I need to pay 1 blue and 3 resources of my choice.
Expensive.
Quite expensive, but quite worth it. Well, for me anyway.
Yep.
I have a choice of 3 actions. Say I want to take this one. I take one of my little player tokens and I place it below that action. And I'll then be able to gain the rewards for that action.
Yep.
There is 2 types of rewards. The top part is, or it changes every time, rather. In this case, I will be able to take a glyph card. We'll explain them just after this action. And we get victory points.
Yes.
So we move along the little victory point track. The reward below is moving up one of the central staircases on the pyramid, which you might have spotted earlier, because they're quite evident. We will explain how that goes, but basically, when you move up the staircase, you move up a number of space indicated with your little meeple.
Yep.
And it's for end of game scoring. We'll explain that when we get to the end of game phase. However, every time you reach the top of the pyramid, which is one of these final spaces, you will be able to take one of the tokens from the top of the temple and gain the victory points shown.
Yes.
So there's a little bit of a race element and optimization element to this.
Yeah.
You can gain multiple tokens if you get multiple meeples to the top of the pyramid first.
Yes.
But it's only 1 token per meeple. You cannot split your movement. It must all be on one staircase. You are, however, allowed to waste points if you only needed 1, but you've got 3. You can move up 1 space and ditch the other 2.
Yeah.
Okay? So, I place my token down, I gain my rewards. Now, when my token is there, nobody else can do that action.
Yeah.
Okay?
It's blocked.
Exactly. Contrary to the ball court, where the tokens are just for territory control, you can take any card that is available. So how do we get these actions back? Well, when we cycle these cards, we also take all of the tokens and put them in this part. Of course, except for the block tokens, the bad ones, where we will be blocking off actions during the game.
The black closed tokens will always stay.
Exactly. I should also note on that point that there are 2 spaces blocked off per dice result. So it can go very quickly. Anyway, so that is the altars.
Yes, absolutely. So once I have completed the altars, then the final area on the board is going to be the hieroglyphic stairway. And Jay, I'll let you jump in and start explaining what happens when I place my totem there.
Exactly. So this is a small little collection mechanic which will allow us to gain additional actions and pieces for our Jade mask. So how does it work? We can see that there are different types of glyph card here. They are all different colours. Each colour is a different symbol, but each colour is always the same symbol. Okay? When I go here, of course, I pay or I gain anything I need to gain or pay, and then I choose one of the pathways. We have one that costs 1, one that costs 2, one that costs 3. If I take the one that costs 1, I will only gain 1 glyph card, but I go up the staircase 3 times. Very cheap for that kind of effect.
Yes, true. Certainly at the beginning of the game.
Exactly.
Definitely.
The more I pay, the more glyph cards I get, but the less I can go up the staircase. Up to you to decide what you need. What do these cards do? Well, once you have them in your possession, you can exchange them once per turn at any point during your turn.
Yes.
Even before the court phase.
Yes.
So if you're out of tiles, you can indirectly get tiles through this action.
Ooh,
so you have the choice of doing that.
I didn't think of that.
Exactly. So, for example, here I have 4 cards of different colours. Okay? We look at these 2 tables here. There are 2. One for exchanging cards of the same colour and glyph, or one for exchanging cards of different colours and glyphs. Okay? So I had 4 cards, so 4. Okay? So there is the little 2 and this symbol here. This symbol, wherever you find it on the board, means as a reward, you may perform any action. Okay? Yes. Copan is a game about optimizing one's actions, setting off combos. Yes. However, this action is not free.
No.
You don't move your totem, you don't pay anything to do it, but you must pay the cost of the action. So, if your free action is to go to the ball court and take a character, you must still pay the cost of that character. Yes. But you still get to place down a token. Okay? And then once you have done your free action, or not, you may also take pieces of your Jade mask.
Yes. So, your Jade mask is this delightful little puzzle that is next to me here. As you can see, each player has all of the pieces of their Jade mask at their disposal at the beginning of the game. Each one has a number on the back that matches the number on the Jade mask to help you pick them out a little bit more quickly. Your Jade mask is only ever going to give you bonuses. It's only good stuff, which is good news in a game like Copan. The idea is, whenever I generate a section of my Jade mask, either by trading glyph cards or any other effect during the game, there are other bonuses that allow you to obtain a fragment of your Jade mask, I must place that fragment immediately. Starting from the outside of my board, so the first piece of the puzzle that I placed, for example, if I chose to place piece number 2, I flip it over to reveal the lovely green Jade side, and I place it over the bonus that corresponds to its number. So here it would be 1 resource. Once I have started from any outside area of the board, so any one of the outside bonuses is available to me at the start, each additional piece of mask that I place during gameplay must be adjacent to the one I placed before, otherwise my mask will collapse. So, for example, the next piece of Jade that I would place could be this one, and I believe you gained 2 pieces there, so that's pretty good there. I would gain 2 red resources and 1 red resource of my one other resource of my choice, excuse me. I could have chosen to place on any other available space around the first section of my mask that I place. If I manage to fill in my entire mask during gameplay, I will gain 10 victory points at the end. So your mask is really the kind of, it's a really interesting resource that's open to you during gameplay to give you that little boost that you might need to get some extra resources. Sometimes you can get extra court tiles. There are lots of things that it offers you. Obviously, you just have to choose where you start building it very carefully, because it may take you too long to reach that vital additional piece that you needed to get that one bonus that you so sorely desire. Exactly.
It's a great little one-shot bonus.
It really is, yeah.
If you're like, I need 1 resource to do this excellent combo that I've planned, I don't have it, I have some glyph cards, boom, Jade mask.
Yeah.
There is no limit to the amount of Jade cards that you may have in your possession.
Glyph cards.
Glyph cards. You can exchange them once again at any time during your turn.
Yep.
However, only once per turn.
Yes.
You may use any number of Jade cards when you exchange. So even if you have 10 for whatever reason, you can say, I'm only going to exchange, for example, 5 of them because I only need 3 mask pieces, and the extra action is nice.
Of course.
Okay.
And yeah, obviously you have to take into account the fact that your Jade mask will give you additional resources and different things, but if you cannot store them, they are lost.
Indeed.
So sometimes it's a good choice to take fewer Jade mask sections and save more for later. They're a good emergency lever as well. Absolutely.
Obviously, it goes without saying, the more you exchange at one time, the more pieces you get. And also, the bonus action actually becomes cheaper.
Yes.
Small detail too. So you always get 1 action and only 1 action, no matter how many cards you exchange, apart from, of course, the bare minimum. Yeah. But if you exchange more, you not only get more mask pieces, that action becomes cheaper.
Absolutely.
There we go. And that is the 5th action.
Yeah, so Essentially, each of your turns you are going to play as we described. You will place one court tile, you will advance one of the decline trackers, resolve any events that occur, generate your resources depending on how many are left to you at that stage, and then you will play one of the possible 5 actions on the board. Play will continue in this manner. At the end of a player's turn, any cards that were taken from, well, any cards or tiles that were removed from the board during their turn are refreshed. So glyph cards are refreshed, character cards are refreshed, and court tiles are also refreshed, and then it moves on to the next player's turn.
Exactly.
Play will continue in this way until either there are no court tile spaces available left on the central pyramid, or 2 of the resource trackers have reached that fateful final square.
Exactly.
Once this happens, we will move on to final scoring. So final scoring is fairly simple. There are a couple of areas on the board that are taken into account. Jamie, let's start with site 1.
Yes, so going around the board, as I said earlier, the number of different embassies that you have visited during the game will earn you a certain amount of points. If you have gotten all 6, it's a lot of points.
It is.
Of course, if certain of the embassies close and you didn't get into them before they did, that does cut you off from points, but there are ways to get into those embassies as rewards in other parts of the game. So always keep an eye out for that if you need them. Very important, in a lot of the endgame scoring, it is possible to get negative points.
Yes.
Now, thematically, this represents you as a family, as the governing body that you are trying to be, kind of taking from the city, but not giving back, not investing in what you're doing.
Yeah.
So in the case of embassies, if you don't visit any cities, so you're a very powerful family, but you have 0 diplomatic ties, that's not great. So that's -5 points. If you only visit 1, you get -5. And then as you start to get more and more, then you will actually gain points.
Potentially up to 40 points, which in a game like Copan is pretty huge.
It is, but it is a lot of resources and actions.
Expensive in actions and resources, as you said. Yeah, definitely. For the ball court, as I explained earlier, the amount of players that you have in the Sacred Ball game will gain you points at the end. If you have the most players on the left, the right-hand side, and the overall ball court, you will gain a certain number of points. In the case of a tie, we do the sum of the points and then divide equally between players, rounding down. Site 4 does not bring you any points directly at the end of the game.
All the other scoring happens here.
Exactly. So the central pyramid stairways, as we were talking about earlier, are going to be a bit of a race during the game. So meeples that reach the top are going to gain extra points, but they also have quite a heavy effect on end of game scoring as well. As we can see here on the board, I will start off on with my priest meeple on the space that will lose me points.
Exactly.
So here, for example, I'm going to lose 6 points per storage extension that I have at the end of the game if I have not moved up this staircase at all. Of course, if I have no storage extensions at the end of the game and have played through the entire game with just my original board, I don't lose any points at all. So it's basically a bit of a choice of either you have to invest completely within a space and move up the stairway, or if you ignore it completely, you won't have any negative effects at the end of the game.
You can also just choose to invest a little bit.
Just a bit.
Or a lot even. It's really up to you as a player to decide, okay, well, listen, I need these characters, so I will go to the ball court, but I want to more focus on blah, blah, another action.
Yes.
Okay, I'll lose for 8 points, but I'll gain more.
Exactly.
Up to you guys.
So it's essentially gaining the maximum, optimizing even further, reaping the maximum amount of benefit from the actions that I have performed during the game. So here, this stairway concerns storage extensions that I have. This stairway is about the number of tokens I have on the ball court overall, no matter what side they're on. This stairway concerns the amount of player tokens that I invested into the altars during the game. So whether they are in the reserve section or below the altar cards at the end of the game, they still count the same. And this final stairway is about the number of sections of Jade Mask that I built during play. So, as I was saying, it's all about reaping the maximum amount of benefits from all of that. So, players will gain or lose points depending on the different factors that we just explained, and at the end of the game, you obviously may also have character cards that give you end of game scoring.
If you've finished your Jade Mask completely, get more points.
Exactly, and once all of those elements have been taken into account, the player with the most victory points leaves the greatest legacy behind after Copan collapses and is abandoned by its inhabitants. That is basically it.
Exactly.
So there are, obviously, we're not going to go into all of the different symbols and what they mean. There is a very complete glossary in the rulebook about that, but essentially that is how Copan is played. I hope that this has been a useful tutorial for you to help you get to grips with the basic rules of the game and perhaps decide whether or not it is for you. If you would like to see gameplay videos about Copan Dying City, we will be publishing them soon, if not already, on our channel right here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you all very soon. Bye everyone!